First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to participate on this producer panel. Whenever I first got the call, they said that they was looking for somebody that would have, a hands-on approach to what they were doing, and I felt like, well, how could you get any more hands-on than a dairyman? So I think that fits right into where we're going here. But this picture here shows this is the cow that we raised at the place. We did sell out in 2016. On April 11th, we had a tornado hit us. Didn't take out the milking facility, but it did take out the facility where we worked the beef cattle and the dairy cattle. And I think that, it was a sign from the good Lord at the time, and I didn't adhere to that sign. 2 weeks later, he sent us another one. So at that time, I decided something's got to give because there was too much cleanup going around the place. So the dairy seemed to be the one that wasn't making a profitable income for what we had to do on the farm, so we sold the dairy. This cow here is being actually housed at OSU, Oklahoma State University Dairy, and we had sent 6 of them up there. She's a show cow. She's been involved in 2 national shows, and both shows she came up as honorable mention. She got pulled out for the grand drive, but she didn't actually win it. So, that's something we're kind of proud of, because that's something that through my generation working on the farm, I took over the dairy farm back in the 80s, and as a 3rd generation dairy farmer. My grandfather started that, so this is like the result of what comes about of all the hard work and effort that goes into it. Next slide here is my family. This is my immediate family. I've got children ranging from the age of 10 to 37. That's a pretty big gap, but my oldest daughter, Alicia, on the back row there, second from the right, is a 2nd grade school teacher. My son that's in the middle there, he is a chef at a high-end steakhouse of all things in Dallas, Texas. So he's helping do his part on the beef end on that end. So my other daughter that's next to him is Cammie, and she's a photographer. In fact, she's the one that took all the pictures for this slide presentation. And then we got the granddaughters down there. We've actually got another additional daughter that was 15 months old, but there at my side is Allie. We call her Allie B. Her name's Allie Beth. The one behind me is Ava. She's a soccer player. And then my wife, Jackie's sitting next to me, and our daughter that's a 10-year-old, Michaela. She's in school, 5th grade now. And then the other granddaughter there is Jordan, and she is her main thing is she's into dance class right now. And both my son-in-laws, Jonathan on the left, he works for Baker Hughes, which does all the drill bits for the oil field companies in Oklahoma. And my other son-in-law on the right there, Justin, he is a supervisor for a pipeline company. So they're involved in the oil industry, and so they looks like they've got a good outcome from that. But these kids, they were all raised on the dairy. They know what work ethic is, and whenever they go out to find jobs, I think people out in the country looking for people to employ, they take that into account, because my son was hired at Eskimo Joe's, a big place right at the Oklahoma State University. It's kind of a hangout for all the college kids. It's off campus there, but he was hired on the fact that his resume stated that he was raised on a dairy farm. They told him that whenever he went in for the interview, that was one of the reasons they hired him, because they knew that he was raised on the dairy and that he knew how to work hard and put all the hours in. But it's very rewarding to raise a family there, but I wouldn't say it was profitable, because dairymen are overachievers. I mean, we're in the position we are because we produce so much milk. Back in the 1940s, we had 4 times as many cows as we do now, but we have 75% less cows nowadays than we did then, but we're still producing more milk now than what we did back in those days. So, I've always considered dairymen kind of overachievers. They always take the front run on things. We started using AI several years ago, back in the 40s when it first came out, and that advanced our genetics to where they are today. Another thing, this is my parents. My dad is my partner in this operation. Morrisland is what we call it. He's quite the bionic man, I guess I could say, because he's had both shoulders, both knees, and 1 hip replaced, and the guy still gets around. 78 years old, and he wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, if you put him in the rest home, he'd just shrivel up and die. So he's eager to get out every morning and help with everything that goes on. Morrisland is like I said, we were very had several enterprises. The dairy was the one that went first. We've always had a beef cattle operation. We have a cow-calf operation that we run about 125 head of cow-calf Angus pairs. Also, in addition to that, we have a company that's Washita Fertilizer Company. We strictly handle anhydrous ammonia. A lot of the co-ops around in our area quit handling it because of safety issues and other issues pertaining to people trying to steal it to make it, their own little happy stuff out of. But anyway, we got past that, so that kind of expanded our customer base. We work about a 50-mile radius from where we're at. We have 23 nurse tanks. We usually sell about 1,500 tons of anhydrous a year. If you equate that out, that's somewhere between 70 and 75 semi-loads. And I would say that most of that we do custom application for Bermuda grass pasture in the springtime and wheat pasture in the fall. But anyway, getting back to the dairy, we always had the cows to where we knew what we had to do in the parlor to keep them ready. And you got to face it, antibiotics cost money. And not only does they cost money, but whenever you have to treat a cow in the milking parlor, you have to discard that milk. Well, that's your total income off that cow anyway. So, we try everything we can think of to try to avoid using antibiotics in the first place. I mean, we try to do things preventative. All the time from whenever the calf is born, and we have an advantage in the dairy than what they did in the beef cattle because we've got these cows up close when they calve. We keep an eye on them all the time. We make sure that within 2 hours after they're born, they've got colostrum in them. And I mean, we load them up with colostrum. And also, we will vaccinate the calves when they're born. And also, we will do, we pour iodine on their navel while they're there to help prevent some infections. When they go into the parlor, of course, the biggest thing about dairy cows is what dairy farms would face would be the mastitis control that they have in their herd. And there's lots of preventive measures that are in place now, and the ones that I used back then. I guess the biggest thing that we realized is we pre-dip and post-dip with a solution that's antiseptic that helps fight bacteria. And so it's the same solution as a pre-dip and the post-dip. The only thing is that I have designated dippers, which, the one is the pre-dip, one is the post, are color-coded. And so whenever we bring a cow in the barn, we'll dip her and use a biodegradable paper towel to dry her off with, to stimulate her, then we'll put the milking machine on them. Other things that we do this is just kind of common operation for ourselves, but we also give our cows a manicure, the ones that need it. And so about every 60 to 90 days, we would bring a hoof trimmer in, and yes, it costs money, but it actually shows up in the milk tank is how they produce their milk, because I've seen it in times whenever you've got lame cows. Well, if you've got a lame cow, they're not wanting to get around to, the bunk area to fill up on feeds and grains and so forth. So hoof trimmers are very important, although they are costly, but it's a great health benefit for the cows because, we care for our cows. Our cows are like family, and so we treat them as so. But another thing that we do is have a foot bath that cows have an outlet they walk through out of the milking parlor, where they'll go through a copper sulfate foot bath, and that helps with foot health. And one of the big things that we had problems with was a hairy foot wart's what they call it. I think the actual official name for it is dermal digititis or digital dermatitis. And so, like I say, we strive to do everything we can to prevent things happening. We also, one of the things that's also a great tool for DHI is our DHIA records, which is Dairy Herd Improvement Association. I did sit on a board several years ago. It was Heart of America. That was an organization that took in dairies from Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota. We tested some herds out of Colorado and also southeast Missouri. But what this does is this gives the dairyman, we would test the cows every 30 to 45 days. A supervisor comes in and takes milk weights, takes milk samples, and we could know what our butterfat content was, what our protein content was on the milk, and it was optional, but we could use a test that was called a somatic cell count contest. And what that would do is it would indicate to us if we had some subclinical cases of mastitis, so therefore we would know, to pay more attention to that cow. If we had to treat her, we would treat her. We would do the recommended times withdrawal that was recommended by the manufacturer of the antibiotic, but also we have an on-farm antibiotic test that we could actually test within 3 hours. We would know whether the residue in that milk was already gone or not. So every time we would need to treat a cow, we would do that, plus the fact that whenever the truck comes to pick the load up from the dairy farm, they pull samples there and they take those samples to the processing plant and they make sure that those samples are free of antibiotics before they dump the load. So especially in the dairy system, there's hardly any way that residue can enter into the food chain. But we are stewards of the land. We try to keep our cows clean and cool. We had shades in the summertime for them to stay in. Like I said, always kept a good supply of water for them. We worked with a nutritionist to keep a healthy rumen in place, and worked with him off and on. We would take hay samples so we could formulate a grain that we would feed through the barn while the cows were in the parlor, which I know that's not the modern nowadays because everybody went to TMR and feed outside the barn. But, I was old school for a long time. This fit our operation best. We only milked about 65 head, but they were all registered Holsteins. I guess to sum things up, this picture here kind of puts everything together, kind of what we do. We graze pasture. We've got the Holstein heifers replacements, and we got the Angus replacement heifers there, alfalfa hay field, and then they came along and put something there in the background. I'm not sure what that is, but that didn't seem to hurt anybody on the farm at the time when that happened. But anyway, one thing I think the point I'd like to drive home is we try to do every preventative measure that we can on the farm so we don't have to use antibiotics. But there comes that point to where, I would treat that animal just like I would treat a family member. It gets to the point to where everything has been exhausted. We've got to do something because, it's for the love of what you do. And this is what we do. So with that being said, I'll leave you with the contact information. If I have any questions, I'd be glad to talk to you.